You're listening to the Synergy Leadership Podcast, a discussion with engaging, empowering, and enlightening leaders about the greatest competitive advantage in business and entrepreneurship that often goes unrecognized: a team's energy. Here's your host, the woman who puts the energy in synergy, Karen R. Jenkins.
Hello, and welcome to this segment of Synergy Leadership. I am so honored, humbled, and just excited to have an awesome, outstanding, and dynamic guest with us today, Baron Davis. Baron has a plethora of experience, and before I go into it, because I don't want to miss anything, I'm going to just bring him on immediately because I know there's so much content that he's going to share with us today. And Baron, for our listeners, would you please share with us your background and a little bit about yourself?
I'll start with a little bit about myself. I'm a native of Columbia. So I grew up right here in Columbia, South Carolina. Attended Richland School District 1 public school student. Proud graduate of C.A. Johnson High School, class of 1990. Went on to get a bachelor's degree from Francis Marion University in sociology, and then all of my post-secondary work was done at the University of South Carolina in counselor education and education administration. I've worked in 3 school districts in the state. Orangeburg Consolidated 4. I've worked in Richland 1 and of course in Richland School District 2. I spent the most of my career as an educator in Richland School District 2, serving as an assistant administrator, assistant principal, assistant superintendent, and then most recently superintendent from 2017 to 2023, January 2023. I'm father of 3 beautiful and outstanding and gifted young ladies, 22, 18, and 16. I'm married for almost 25 years to Pam Davis. And we have, like I said, spent all of our time here in Columbia. The oldest of 4 kids, 4 children. And I'm just a real big advocate of equity and inclusion when it comes to identifying barriers and that lead to inequity in the educational experience of students. And so I'm really committed to the idea of identifying those barriers and eradicating those barriers and removing them so all students have opportunity and access to opportunity. That's a little bit about who I am. And I think I kind of incorporate a little bit about what I've done over the course of my career into that.
Well, as I like to share or state to people that have been that servant leader as you have, I want to first thank you for your service. As a former school district superintendent and definitely an experienced educator extraordinaire, serving now as an educational consultant and nationally recognized speaker. And I've heard you speak, by the way. And yes, you are a very dynamic, engaging, and inspiring speaker. One of the things that you're known for is being a huge proponent of purpose, passion, and planting seeds. Can you share with us or expound upon how you harness this concept in leading others?
Yeah, I actually can. I believe that we all are gifted with certain talents, with gifts and talents from God. I think those gifts and talents come to us in these seeds of purpose, right? And we find our purpose through our passions, the things that we are most connected to, things that we enjoy doing, the things that give us and help us find meaning in life. And as we nurture those passions, we can find our purpose. And that purpose, I believe, is connected to what God's purpose for our lives are or is. And when we can connect to that, we will find that it's really around service to mankind. And it should, like any fruit, or anything that you nurture and grow, should be something that can feed other people. And so I always try to find what I'm passionate about and connect my passions to the purpose that God has for my life. And when I was able to connect with that, I found that it was some sort of service to mankind. And Karen, the interesting thing about being a servant leader, I was just thinking about that. It's interesting you said that. I was just thinking about that the other day and reflecting on service leadership. And people use that term a lot, right? I'm a servant leader, I'm a servant leader. And oftentimes we see this begin to be kind of really questioned in a sense of when it comes down to making like certain decisions and tough decisions. And I realized that it kind of dawned on me that the challenge for folk is this: your service is to God. So when you say you're a servant leader, your work should be of service to God. Then it's real easy, not to people, not to mankind. That happens as a result of you doing service for God. You're going to take care of people. But because you can be a servant leader to a lot of things that are not connected to what your true purpose is.
True.
And so, but that's where that's how I align my passions and my purpose to this work that we do.
So in doing that, and I know for me, I align my passion and purpose. I'm going to say I stumbled on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really know when you wake up in the morning as a child and grow into a teenager, even going to college, what you're gifted at or what you're passionate about. Some people are blessed in that way, but then all of a sudden you realize, oh, I'm good at this, so let me go down this path. So when you talk about aligning your passion and your purpose with your ability to be a servant leader, and I love the fact that you talked about the God-centeredness of it all, because sometimes I find, especially when people are serving in different roles, that they forget about what their service is about. So if you're serving a nonprofit, for example, and whatever the purposes of that nonprofit, it's about the community in which it serves. It's not about the individual. And I've had to tell people on numerous occasions, it's not about you, right? It's not about your agenda. It's not about whatever. If you keep your eye on the ball, whatever the mission and vision is for that organization. So when you start talking about you finding your passion and your purpose and your ability to lead, how have you been able to assist others that you have led in along those same lines? So talk to us a little bit about that.
I have a philosophy about, particularly if they're working in the organization with me, and what role I play in that organization, what role they play in the organization. So if I'm playing a role of in support of that person, which I do now as an advisor, senior advisor at Digital Promise, then I need to understand exactly how the person who's leading the organization see themselves and what their vision is for the organization that they're leading, and what goals and objectives that they want to accomplish, and how do my skill set best align with that in order to help them accomplish that, and put them in a position to be successful in doing the work that they want to accomplish. If I'm in a role of being, and I have direct reports to me, as I had in my previous assignment, then my role is one, I always try to hire tough. I try to hire the best people I could possibly hire. And a lot of that is really figuring out from them how they see themselves and are they self-aware. Like, I love self-aware people. That's a symbol of a healthy person, is awareness. And I've talked about the actual self and the perceived self. And so I have a perception of who you are, but there's an action, and so do you. And then there's the actual you. How far apart are those two people? And I try to assess that in talking with them, and then help them get to the perceived self. But if they come already fully self-actualized, they already believe they're fully self-actualized, then there's little I'm going to be able to do to support them, because nobody is fully self-actualized yet. But then I really work on empowering those people to get to where they want to be, to where they to the point in their lives of where they want to be at in the roles that they're fulfilling. And so at that moment, I really try to serve and lead from the perspective of being almost like a shepherd leader. I know this is not one of those official leadership styles, but I've looked at myself as a shepherd leader. And a shepherd leader is a leader, in my definition. This is a person who moves around the flock. Sometimes you're in the front, sometimes you're in the middle, in the midst, sometimes you're in the back. Sometimes you have to protect the right side of the flank. Sometimes you got to protect the left side of the flank as a shepherd. But in all, you're responsible for everybody within that group. But sometimes you got to be in the front so you will know what the terrain is, so you'll know how to monitor and adjust the people that you're leading. Sometimes you got to be in the back to assist those who need assistance so that they can keep up the pace with everyone else. Sometimes you got to be on the side because sometimes people stray off to the left or to the right, and you got to kind of get them back in line or back with the group. And so that's what I do with my team. I just serve as the shepherd. I let them be who they're gonna be, and I try to create the conditions in which they can thrive. That was my role as a leader, and that's how I empower my people to be the best that they could possibly be at the roles that they were doing. And I just create the conditions for them to thrive in.
That is so powerful. I love that analogy. I love the first one I love, and this really aligns with what we do at KRJ Consulting, is in our synergy leadership model, one of the first things we do is what we call self-leadership, because you can't lead others until you can lead yourself. But self-leadership means you have to be aware. And what you and I talked about earlier was the fact that I believe, energy cannot be created nor destroyed, it's only transferred. But as humans, we carry energy, and we're responsible for the energy that we carry into a room, and that people will respond to that. Well, if you're not aware, back to what you said, being aware of the energy or be aware of how you're being perceived, it's pretty important because that's where it starts. And I love the fact that as a leader, you are willing to do what it takes to support your team from the front, from the back, from the side. And a lot of leaders, they still have the hierarchical leadership model where they're up here and everybody has to come to them and all of this stuff like that. But in this new age, especially with the 5 generations of ages in the workplace at the same time, you have different things and different needs and different strategies for different people. I think the way that you lead is very important, because it does require you to meet people where they are and understanding that everybody is not at that same level, but finding or helping them find their purpose, helping them find their compass to ensure that they're being the best that they can be, I think is very crucial. So thank you for sharing that. I love the actual versus perceived. I just had a conversation with a group of, I was at a women's symposium the state chamber hosted last week. And one of the things that I shared was, years ago, I decided to go into speaking after a couple of people kept telling me to do it. And I said, well, yeah, that's all fine and good, but I need to make sure I'm not going to stand on stage just because y'all telling me that and look like, crazy person. But I also wanted to check how I was being perceived. So I had I don't want to call it a tool. It was a 1-page document. It had, maybe 30, 40 adjectives on it. And it had columns and said, you're just nothing like this. You're a little bit like this, neutral, or you're really like this and you're like that. So what I did was I self-assessed to figure out where I was. And then I came back and had my colleagues. So it was friends, family members, colleagues, and people that I worked with. There was about 12 of them. And I had them rate me as well, because I wanted to see, I know this is how I think I'm being perceived. Let me see how I'm actually being perceived. And I wasn't too far off. There were a few things that I had to, oh yeah, okay, well, maybe I'm a little too much of that or not enough this. But it was very eye-opening for me to be able to understand that although I think that I may be perceived this way, it's a really good idea. And you have to have tough skin to do this now to make sure that the way that I'm being perceived is what I am intending.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that. You, of course, Dr. Davis, I'm just so impressed with your background. I too am a product of Richland One, also a product of USC as well. And I look at you and I look at your background, knowing that you're a true trailblazer in many regards. Most recently being the first Black superintendent. And prior to that, you were the first Black principal in one of the largest school districts in the state. Uh, Seeing that inclusion integration, or developing cross-cultural competencies that leverages a diverse talent within the organization, is kind of how we like to work with our clients. We know that's key component to what we offer our clients. I want to find out from you your ability to galvanize strength and differences in diversity. A lot of people refute diversity, or they don't want diversity, and they don't realize the benefits of it. So share with us how you have been able to galvanize that on your end.
I think, one, by understanding that in many aspects we accomplish diversity by default. I can walk into a room. I always say that I can walk in the room and take a snapshot of the room and see diversity within the room, even if everybody looks alike. Because we bring diversity of thought, we bring diversity of upbringing, we bring diversity of religion, we bring diversity of the way we handle stress and the way we think, and we bring diversity with us wherever we go because we are unique individuals. And so that's the default diversity. And then we have to make some sort of effort to be intentional about having certain people, having a diverse group in the room, to bring those different perspectives out, right? And allow the space and create a space where that diversity can shine. Because if you don't, oftentimes people are afraid to share their differences for fear of being ostracized or not taken seriously. And so you may even have in a group of people who seem the same that are diverse, but sometimes there's this mentality to just go with what you think is the most popular or the least restrictive or the least controversial thought or position. But then when you want intentional diversity, you got to be inclusionary in that, right? You just can't bring people to the room and put people at the table, or invite people in the room and not give them an opportunity to actually be seen and heard and then respected for their differences. So whether it's ethnicity, religion, socioeconomic backgrounds, ability levels, it doesn't matter. You got to give everyone an opportunity to be inclusive and heard. And then in that effort, at the same effort, you got to support what they are actually doing. So my efforts would always be to be very intentional about listening to my team and to my staff, to my colleagues, to the people I work with. How do I empower them to lead that project or that initiative? And then what is the support mechanism we put around them, and then being intentional about alternating that. And so if something comes from my, and I'm going to speak from my former experience, former experience. If something comes from my CFO, or something comes from my HR chief, or something comes from my communication chief or the deputy, we're going to say, okay, we're going to take this direction, and we're going to let you lead us in this project. And we're going to let you harness the team, put the team together, and we're going to follow you on this. Or you take that, you bring those perspectives to the table and you listen to it. One of the biggest areas, and always for diversity right now, oftentimes, and you said it earlier, it's generational diversity, the age differences and gaps. I found that a lot of people of similar ages right now have more similarities than people of different ages, because we grew up in different eras and different decades. So I've seen that, 22, 23-year-olds, regardless of their ethnicity, may have a lot of similarities with the music they listen, even like music now. The music, the way they dress, the way they believe the world should be, so and so, how they see themselves in the world, versus a person that's 65, their perspective of how the world is. And so there's a diverse thought in that. And now, if you're leading in an organization right now, you got 5 generations in the workforce, you got to be able to pull that together and harness that and then be impactful. And you see that oftentimes in every organization right now. So how then do you do that? And that's why it's important to give everyone an opportunity to be heard and value what they say, and then try to find something where they can lead the team in implementing a practice, which then gives them, I think, a sense of belonging and a sense of support. And then that gives them a sense of agency to the organization and the mission and vision at hand.
So awesome, and I love you bringing up the diversity of age. So I had a client years ago that was having some challenges on their leadership team, and when I went in to do, because we do organizational development and training and things of that nature, but one of the things that I noticed was there was a huge spectrum of decades of ages, and in one particular case, there was a older Black male who was probably in his 60s, and a younger white female who was probably in her 20s. And they clashed. So the clashing of thought, the clashing of how things should be done, caused friction. And they weren't the only two. There were others that we did. So we came in, and part of our training was, we did productivity, we did team building, we did time management, we did all that customer service stuff. But one of the things we did was on the generational gap was we went in and we showed them, instead of here's the atypical thought process that you'll find in a baby boomer or an X or a Y or a millennial. And then there was, this is kind of what motivates them as an age group. Not everybody falls in that, but it was pretty close. But then we were able to cross-reference and show them how they could lean on each other, because there's certain things that millennials bring to the table that a baby boomer does not. And there's certain things that a baby boomer brings to the table that a millennial does not. And if we learn how to create what we talked about earlier, that synergy of how do you leverage someone else's talents and gifts and utilize them all, it gave them a better appreciation for each other. And I got calls within a week of the differences in how they related. And within a month, just a huge change in how they were able to work with each other. And at the end of the day, the organization benefited from that. So again, back to I think some leaders are leaders because they've been in positions for a while, but I think professional development and continuous learning, especially as our worlds change, we had a certain world pre-COVID, which is totally different than this post-COVID world. And if you're not going out, finding out best practices and things to do and how to relate and those type things, it's challenging. So
yeah, I think COVID, COVID really exposed how true, even with leaders and just people in general, we all believe that we see the world from an objective worldview. Mm-hmm. And we really believe that, right? And so when we have differences, like how could you not know that that's not right? Right. But truly, we see the world from us. We all have a subjective worldview that is dependent on a lot of factors that help us see the world through certain lenses and certain ways of, and a lot of it's with our beliefs, our mindsets, our values, but with a subjective worldview. There's a term in counseling called the phenomenological perspective. And the phenomenological perspective is basically your perception of reality. And it tells you that when you're working with a client, you have to understand their phenomenological perspective in order for you to be able to help them change. You have to understand how they see the world, because you have to understand that they believe that's right. Right? Because they believe it's right. So you got to help them see that. And that's what you do with your teams before you can, in order for teams to be functional and healthy in your leadership, you have to understand the subjective worldview of your members that make up your team. And of course, the bigger the team, the more challenging that can be at times. But COVID really exposed that for leaders, people in leadership, because you got so many people have so many things that they were everybody wanted their needs met first. Mm-hmm. And it was based on their view of how important they were to the organization, to society, to the economy, to the health of others, to their families. and it was all subject, and we all believed that we were just as valuable and important, which we are all valuable. There's no value we can place on it, but we all believed that our way of seeing things was the right way.
That was a huge game changer, and I was hoping that as a society, as a country, just as individuals, that we would have taken I think we took lessons out of that. I know we took lessons. I know personally I took lessons out of that. There was that time for us to sit and be quiet for a little while anyway. I know y'all didn't have that opportunity, but just to reflect and kind of get a new perspective on life. And as a result of that, some changes internally with some folks have been made, but then, some folks, they went further left or further right or further wherever they were going than they needed to. So some of those challenges of me first or my needs or whatever, I think is still out. And I think as leaders, everybody needs to understand what's in it for me.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, you have to understand what are the core values and missions of the organizations in which you're serving. Because regardless of what's in it for you and serving that organization, I need you to understand what's in it for you serving the organization. But your goal and your aspirations and what you should be doing is actually understanding the goals and aspirations of the organization and helping that organization reach its goals. That's why you're there. And as leaders, I think it's our job to make sure that our team members understand what's in it for them, understand their core values, and make sure that they align. They don't have to actually agree or be identical, but they do need to align. I've had to tell people that in coaching or in working with them in leadership positions that, they come to work miserable every day. I'm not going anywhere and be miserable every day. So if you're going to work and being miserable every day, it may be an indication that your core values don't align with the organization. It doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make them wrong. It just means that there's no alignment. And if there's no alignment, then you might want to go find something that does align.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want to sit there and make everybody else miserable either. So I think self-reflection, being self-aware, all of that is important to being a good leader and helping other people understand that as well. One of the other things, we talked about earlier was the synergy leadership concept and how it focuses on self-leadership. And you, of course, have utilized this technique for yourself and your teams. But clearly, one of your key areas of expertise is education, but you also possess the strength of developing leaders on your team. Is there anything else that we haven't discussed that will encompass your secret to being such a dynamic and great leader?
Wow, that's a good question. Now, I think what has helped me the most is really understanding and appreciating and feeling almost a sense of, I always feel a sense of unworthiness for the gift and the favor that I feel like God has on my life, has given me. And so I'm always trying to work hard to prove that I earn and deserve God's favor, not man's favor. And so I don't so my success is coming not trying to be overly concerned with the favor of man and individuals, and really understanding who I'm here to serve. Now, I didn't always believe this, right? I mean, and at all. I mean, I've evolved to this, right? And so understanding I'm never fixed and finite, that I am always evolving and always changing and growing and learning. But one thing that has remained consistent in my life, when I look back over my life and over my leadership, has always been this invisible hand that has guided me and placed me in positions that has given people the spirit of advocacy for me in rooms that I'm not in, that have given people the spirit of mentoring for me when I didn't ask them to be mentors for me. They've given people that spirit of concern and love and compassion and protection for me when I've not made the best decisions. but always feeling like I am owed and obligated to God to be a good man, a good leader, good, father, husband, all those things that go along with that. A sense of obligation to people who come before me, who sacrifice to make sure that I had opportunity. So I don't feel like I feel like I can't squander the opportunity. Not having courage has helped me be a good leader. And I say that, and I don't say that like I'm not afraid. Like I make choices and decisions, and I worry about them like everybody else. But courage is doing things even when you're afraid and when you have fear, right? So standing for what's right and being willing to speak out and speak up, and not for show. Don't do it for show. I've shared with someone recently, we were talking about accolades and awards, and all those things are great, and I love them, and I appreciate them, I should say. But very few of them have I ever even applied for myself. I don't seek those types of things. That comes along with it, but they are all reflections of my team. And so I've had the gift, and I've been blessed to be able to develop and have really good teams. But when I look back over my time growing up, I always had the ability to do that with my friends. I was always able to kind of be that person in that group to say, okay, this is the wrong thing, this is the right thing. Let's talk about how we're going to do this. Let's fix this issue. You and so beef, and we're going to figure out how we're going to do this. That translated from being a young kid to when I was in high school, to when I was in college, to now, because understanding the power of community. And again, I would say that last piece is understanding the power of community for me, that I am, because we are the term Ubuntu. I really embraced that, because I was community. I was economically poor, but community rich. My community took care of me, fed me, clothed me, protected me, and gave me the opportunities to develop into the man that I am, and stand still connected to those people from my community. My friends that I grew up with in high school, I'm still friends with them today. And I don't measure their success based on how much money they make, what kind of cars they drive, and what neighborhoods they live in. Their success is based on the fact that we love each other, and we stay connected to one another. And I can call them today, and they can call me today, and they still call me Bam, and some of them still call me Fat Boy, and whatever it was. And it's all love, and that's the secret to my success. Being grounded and being humble, understanding that God is giving me this opportunity, not man. You're on mute, Karen. Sorry.
I said that that just brings so many similarities that we share, because I grew up in Greenview, and that was nothing but community.
Yeah.
The schools that we attended, the families that I'm proud to say that I have classmates that I went to school with from the 1st through 12th grade. And we just celebrated our 40th high school reunion last summer. And going back and seeing them was just like being at home again, because they are my family. And you're right, we don't judge each other from where you are and what you're doing and how it was just, you are family. This is who we grew up with. I will say this, Baron, from the time that I've known you, you don't have to earn your giftedness and having your favor, because God appointed it to you. And all he wanted you to do was, take care of the gifts, to use the gifts, to leverage the gifts. And by far, when I look at you and your career and all that you've done, you've definitely done that. So just know that you, I won't call you one of a kind, but you're definitely gifted and favored. And everybody does not have that. But a lot of that comes from being gifted and being favored, and the energy that you put out into the universe, the energy that you exude, comes back to you tenfold. And because you are a giving person and you come from that high spirit, you're receiving back. And I can tell you from my grace that I've received, I know that my life has been blessed because of what I put out in energy and grace to others, God has multiplied that. And when I do for others, I'm not doing for others for them to do something for me. I don't really like politics because, people do favors for you and they're expecting you to do something in return. I do it because that's my heart, and my grace and my gifts and my reward for that doesn't even come from the person that I'm blessing. It comes from somebody totally different, the Most High. So again, just so many similarities. And we can talk to next week. So I'll say this. I'm going to ask you a few closing questions, and I'm definitely going to ask you back. So because there's a lot more in there that I think we can share. I'm going to ask, and this is a question that we typically ask all of our clients at the end. If you could give one piece of leadership advice to our listeners, what advice would that be?
Oh, that's an easy question for me. And I put it in the acronym is ACT. Authenticity. First and foremost, be authentically yourself and be correct and be authentically yourself. There's only one of you. You one of one. There's 8 billion people in the world, and God's only made one of you. Your power is in your authenticity. So figure out who you are. And as I shared earlier, there's 2 versions of you. There's the perceived you and the actual you. But the perceived you is how you perceive yourself in the world and how you actually are. You want to align those 2 people as best you can, those 2 versions of yourself as best you can. That's your self-actualization goal. So authenticity is important. Courage. Be courageous in your leadership. You cannot be a coward and lead. Courage means, again, you can be fearful and make a decisions, but you gotta make the decision as a leader. And sometimes it's not a popular decision. It's, and don't lead by popularity. One of the things that I hate the most, and I say hate because I really do hate it, is people who live and lead by Facebook and social media. I cannot stand social media. I'll tell you what I equate that to. I call it the Pontius Pilate style of leadership. People who lead by the populace. It's the Pontius Pilate style of leadership. Here's a man who could not find fault with someone, but because he couldn't find fault and the people wanted it, he gave them what they wanted and crucified Jesus, crucified someone, even though he was perfect. Because it reminds me not to take it personal when you get crucified. Because that's what Pontius Pilate leaders do. They lead by the populace, what people tell them, the people they listen to. Now, he didn't go out into the whole community to find out what the whole community wanted. He just listened to that certain little group of people. So you got to be courageous and do the right thing, the thing that you know is right. And the last thing is be true. Be true to yourself. Be true to your community. Be true to the mission and vision that you have accepted to lead. Truth is important. And that spells act. That's how you act, by being authentic, by being courageous, and by living the truth and holding firm to the truth. And you will be, I think, a successful leader.
That was so powerful, Baron. Oh my gosh, what a way to close. And close for now, because I definitely want to invite you back to have some more dialogue and conversation around this, because there's so many nuggets and pieces of information that you shared with our audience, and we'll definitely have you back with us again. And for our viewers, thank you. I hope you got as much out of this conversation with Dr. Baron Davis as I did. We appreciate you, Baron. We definitely look forward to having you back again. And for our listeners, we look forward to having you back again on our next episode. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Synergy Leadership Podcast with Karen R. Jenkins. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe, rate, review, and share our show. See you next time.